Okay, hi, this is part 2 of the knowledge test on basic electronics worksheet completion. We are going to look at question 2 here. Alright, it says to complete the circuit diagram below such that when a switch is pressed, the lamp or LED comes on. So take note, we do not associate lamp as freely to LED like emitting diode because as we know lamp we reserve it for the filament tungsten bulb type. Okay. So therefore this is the circuit symbol for the lamp, and of course this is the circuit symbol for the LED. Now as you can see, we are using the NPN transistor. Now you might have this question between NPN and PNP. Yes, you know the difference is the arrow where for the PNP the arrow from the emitter points back towards the base. Alright, so because of the directional change of the current. Then your next question might be, so why are we always using NPN then? So to answer that, when you learn magnetism, right, you probably, very good students will probably learn everything, all right, such as light poles repel, such as north and off, you will repel, and unlike poles attract. So if you want to study smart, as you know, this is a fact that you only need to know half of it in order to remember the other half. So for example, you choose to remember unlike poles attract, okay, north to south, boys to girls, okay, so that will help you remember. And you don't have to remember the other half, which is like poles repel. So same thing, if we focus on NPN transistor and how using the NPN transistor can control certain circuitries, then when you replace with PNP, it's just going the other way around, all right? So let's just focus on NPN. Now, of course, from higher institutions of higher learning, okay, for example, this module course, you can actually read here, it says that both types are widely used, okay, but the NPN type is more prevalent. So that's why we, when we learn transistors, we actually focus on just NPN types. And also just to entice you a little bit, this is how the NP and the PN junction are actually simplified diagram of the transistor, and how the electron actually flows. All right, this will probably give you some idea of the various NP and the PN junction, all right, when the electron flows in the transistor. So this is beyond our scope of segment level. You just need to focus on this. This is your textbook. So now I'm coming to the textbook finally. In the subtopic 14.12, bipolar transistor on page 285, you can actually see the actual in color, all right, the commonly used transistors, and by industry standards, they have certain serial numbers such as BC548 for this black casing type, it's plastic casing. There's this metallic casing, the BC108, which is also quite popular, and the BFY51. Now, of course, each plastic casings have their different representation, which is the emitter, which is the base, and which is the collector. In your DNT reference guide, you see them as flat, all right, in black and white. So normally when you buy in bulk, right, the transistors actually, their pins are all lined up like that, okay? So when you actually connect up on a circuit board or on a breadboard, you have to open up the legs to connect them accordingly, okay? So for this BC548 type, all right, the BC actually is the representation code for the type of casing. But anyway, just no need to memorize the code anyway. So you can see this part here has a flat edge. All right, the flat edge actually represents the pin nearest the flat edge will be the base. Now, as for the BC108, there is a little extension at the base of this metallic casing that sticks out like a notch. So that pin nearest it will be the base. Of course, this part you also do not need to know much, right? So let's go about answering this then. It's an incomplete circuit, and if you read the instruction is to draw and complete the circuit when a switch is pressed. Okay, so in this case, we can consider using a push button or push to make, they call it PTM, all right, button, and you need to know the symbol for that. So it's only this top part that is not completed, all right? And also you notice that there is no power supply. So in this case, you will have to provide the power supply by drawing the symbols okay, as simple as just labeling the plus maybe 9 volts, okay, and ground or 0 at the bottom. Now, a point to note is that many students have this misconception that power supply, your DC, your batteries, your cells, all right, they are part of the input or they are input components. In fact, power supply actually stands alone, all right? Now, what it means is that it is not part of the circuit per se. It powers up the circuit. The circuit will probably have input components, process components, as well as output components. So just to reiterate, power supply basically is just a standalone device or component itself. It's not an input component. So what you need to focus here is to draw a switch as well as the power supply. Okay, so as you can see, we're going to start completing the circuit here of question 2 of your worksheet. Since this is the highest part of the 680 R here represents resistor, so this is a 680 ohm resistor. So you just need to draw a horizontal line parallel to the ground line, which is at the bottom. All right, and of course I've actually drawn beyond the land, and it'll be good if you can actually connect a switch which is down here. All right, and since this is pressed, we can actually generalize it to just switching it on and it stays on, so you don't really have to push and hold the button there. All right, there are other push type buttons, okay, such as to push to make, it will stay there, and then you push again, it will release and you will turn off the circuit or you will break the circuit. So in this case, we will draw a simple toggle switch. So this will represent that it's open yet, okay, so you have not closed the circuit. And of course down here you may want to extend. Actually I overextended the line, so I just try to make it equal here. And of course down here you will probably need to draw the power supply, okay. And for a number of cells connected in series together, you can actually draw with dash, okay. So but now I'm just going to draw just 3 volts of the power supply. Make sure your lines join, okay. If you see little dots here, so what it means is that the 1 kilo ohm resistor is actually connected as well. So if you want to, for instance, a wire runs across another wire in another circuit, so in order to avoid confusion, you actually create a bridge that jumps over. Alright, so what it means here is there's no connection between these 2 wires. So down here it would be good if you can label it, okay. For example, 3 volts is actually good enough. Of course, to make the LED light up brighter, okay, a typical power supply voltage would be 9 volts. So I pause here for now. Come to the second page of the knowledge test on basic electronics worksheet finally. Question 3 is, what is the purpose of the 1 kilo ohm resistor connected to the transistor in the above circuit on the first page? So the question is about this, not this one, okay. So this is a 1 kilo ohm fixed value resistor connected before the base of the NPN transistor here. So obviously in your previous lessons you already learned that the fixed value resistor of different resistance values actually, depending on the value, will limit the amount of current flowing through. In short, the higher the resistance values, the lesser the current will be able to flow through the fixed value resistor. So in this case, 1 kilo ohm by and large, alright, is not a very high value resistor. So therefore, it will allow some current to pass through, enough to turn on the transistor where the voltage across the base and the emitter, the VBE, previously in part 1 the video already learned, is 0.7 volts or higher, right? So the trigger voltage here is 0.7 volts or higher. So coming back to answer that question here, this 1 kilo ohm, the purpose, so you can actually answer it directly by saying that it refers to the 1 kilo ohm fixed value resistor. Okay. It is to protect the sensitive transistor by limiting the amount of current flowing into its base. I will give to this question about the purpose of the 1 kilo ohm resistor protecting the sensitive transistor. If this is a 1 mark question, you will get the 1 mark if you were to answer shortly by saying it is to protect the sensitive transistor. If this is a 2 mark question, then you have to elaborate, right? Not just by saying protecting to get the first mark. You probably will add a conjunction here by limiting the amount of current flowing. So your second mark will come in for limiting the amount of current flow. If this is a 3 mark question, then you have to say where the current flows into. In this case, it will be into its base of the transistor. So the way you give the response to the question, all right, the quality of your response is important, and of course it matters, especially if this is a more than 1 mark question.